let's move to the running back position for the Week 8 waiver wire. And I'll just be honest, this is where it drops off a little bit, mostly the same as last week. And that's kind of what happens with the running back position at this point of the year. You either have a starter go down and you're bidding everything to get that backup running back, or it's just kind of stocking up and hoping you get ahead of the curve and don't have to find yourself in that position. Very rare we're going to find just random, okay, pretty usable guys here. It's all about handcuffs. It's all about boosting that long-term upside for your roster. And on a Week 8 coming up where we have no bye weeks, you should hopefully have a full roster where you don't need to plug and play too many streamers at the running back position. So let's talk about some of those top handcuffs, and ideally, again, a handcuff with benefit that could potentially start for you should you need it. Ray Davis topping the list for my favorite running back pickups of the week. And granted, he's only the 7th ranked overall pickup on my list. You can find that over at Roto Street Wolf on Twitter. I love the receivers over the running backs this week, and we're going to get to them. But Ray Davis gets another touchdown back-to-back weeks now with a score. Even with James Cook in, we see Davis looking solid yet again. 5 carries, 41 yards, and the score. Also hauls in a 6-yard catch. This is more so, again, though, what happens if Cook is out? We saw it last week. Davis had 23 opportunities. He had over 80% of the running back rushes, nearly 70% of the snaps with James Cook out. So we know he is the guy if Cook misses time. And even if Cook is in, we just saw this week, garbage time, cleanup, mop-up duty could be that kind of bull that just blows you down after this Bills team builds a big lead. Davis is perfect to be that bulldozer, kind of bleed out the clock for you. So we saw that type of role this past week for him. Really, really like Ray Davis as probably the best handcuff with benefits that's out there in over half of leagues. Still want to point out Tyler Allgeier. I know he took a huge step back, only 36 rush yards versus the Seahawks compared to 103 yards and a touchdown over 19 fantasy points just a week ago. Seems like a big letdown, but remember, you weren't taking Tyler Allgeier off the waiver wire to put him into your lineups. Hopefully not, at least. It was because if something happens to Bijan Robinson, who had 21 carries again to the 5 for Tyler Allgeier, we're starting to see it had been kind of a 1A, 1B, a split backfield workload. We are now seeing Bijan fully healthy, really starting to separate 21 rushes to the 5 again of Tyler Allgeier this past week. But this is just going to show you how valuable this backfield role is under Zach Robinson. The zone blocking scheme is looking great. They're throwing to the running backs at a decent clip. Now, Allgeier on his touches, still right over 6 yards of pop, still looking really solid, still a phenomenal pass protector. He would be a true 3-down back in a Falcons offense that is hit or miss right now, but ultimately the easiest playoff schedule for running backs and just in general. So Tyler Allgeier, a guy I would love to stash on all of my benches, as is Braelon Allen. This one's been a very big disappointment since the offensive coordinator change. Nathaniel Hackett got relieved of his duties, and we know that Hackett was always a fan of running back by committees. That was giving Braelon Allen about 33% of the snaps and touches over that span, and he was looking solid anytime he was getting the work. Well, since that OC has been changed, we have only seen a 14% snap rate for Braelon Allen, only 5 and 3 running back opportunities these past 2 games. It has been rough, and he has no longer – it was nice because you had a handcuff with benefits, essentially, with Braelon Allen. You could toss him in there if needed. You can't do that anymore. You can't trust the guy. But I still think maybe of any player, he is the number one. Like if something happened to Breece Hall, super talented, an absolute monster, 240 pounds with good breakaway speed. And on his limited touches this year, he's right at the top of the list in terms of missed tackles, force per touch. Efficiency metrics are great. This guy is a screaming talent. And the Jets have the softest single schedule of the entire rest of season. If something did happen to Breece Hall, we'd be talking about an every week top 10 running back in Braelon Allen. So again, well worth a roster spot for you guys out there. Wanted to toss out Jaylen Warren, got dropped in a ton of leagues. Similar to the rest of this list, another guy that I really don't think has much value, so assuming the starter in front of him, Najee Harris, stays healthy. And it was one of those things where Najee was looking so bad for so long that maybe Warren comes back and takes over. Well, Harris has really started to pick it up. He's looked much better these past 2 weeks. And so it does seem like Warren is strictly a handcuff as well. But this team does run the ball so much. I mean, Najee Harris had over 20 touches last week, and we still had Jaylen Warren getting 14 touches behind him, ultimately racked up 44 yards on 12 carries, called in 2 catches for 15 yards as well, and just looks like he's definitely back to full health after the Steelers took their time with him and was the clear number 2 back Cordell Patterson did miss this game, but it was definitely just the Najee, then the Warren show. And again, you probably can't trust Warren unless there's an injury to Najee, but we know last year was one of the most efficient backs in terms of whatever metric you wanted to look at, in terms of rush rate, expectation, rush over expectation, in terms of explosive run rate, in terms of missed tackles forced per touch. Warren crushed it. So if anything did ever happen to Najee Harris, we know this team, the Steelers, are going to run the ball 30-plus times a week, and Warren in a 20-touch role would potentially break fantasy, given how we've seen him on a per-touch basis. Now, speaking of very efficient on a per-touch basis, Jaylen Wright, only 8% rostered, and I get it. Now we got Mostert back. Devon Achane's dominating the workload. Wright is a distant third, but he's no longer a healthy scratch. That's a step forward. He had 5 carries for 33 yards, over 6 yards a pop, by far the most efficient back on this team on Sunday, and actually right now leading the Dolphins backfield in yards after contact per attempt, rush yards over expectation per attempt, success rate, EPA per rush. All those advanced metrics are going to Jaylen Wright right now. And we got a cakewalk schedule these next 4 weeks. It is strictly a handcuff at this point. You can't trust a third string running back, never mind Mostert right now. So ultimately, you're hoping, again, you never wish for injuries, but you're not getting any value for Wright unless there's an injury to Achane or Mostert. But we're talking about Achane, who historically struggled in his early career here to stay healthy. We know Raheem Mostert already missed time this year, has a long, lengthy history of soft tissue injuries, and is well over 32 right now. So we could see Jaylen Wright ultimately get thrust into a 1A, 1B type of situation. And again, looks like the best pure runner. We know that this Mike McDaniel scheme has made gold out of running backs last year. Running back 3 and running back 4 for Mostert and Achane in points per game. We got Tua coming back this week. We could definitely see a return to the most productive run scheme in the entire NFL, and Jaylen Wright could be a very meaningful part of it. Last running backs on this list, just 2 other guys. Did want to shout out again, Kimani Vidal. Clearly, again, far from J.K. Dobbins, but the only real back to see any time behind him. Dobbins obviously led the way, 17 opportunities compared to just 4 touches for Kimani Vidal. But again, a reminder that this team, the Chargers, want to run the piss out of the ball. They handed off more than any team other than 3. Top 4 right now in handoffs per game. And ultimately, one of the top 7 offensive lines since adding Joe Alt. This last game against the Cardinals, I don't know what happened. Wasn't great, but Dobbins just seemed like he lost a little gas already. We know this guy has had a really hard time staying healthy throughout his NFL career. I love that he's been having a great comeback season, but he is definitely the right type of back to be targeting in terms of handcuffs, injury history, run-heavy offense, and right now, really nobody else with Gus Edwards on the IR. Vidal would be stepping right into a 3-down role. We know he could handle that at Troy. He was one of the NCAA leaders in terms of missed tackles, in terms of so many metrics for this guy, telling you he is a true 3-down horse that can do a lot of damage with the ball in his hands. So I definitely would like to have Kimani Vidal as a bench stash. And one guy we haven't talked about yet, but felt like tossing him in here, Kendre Miller got his first action of the year and took 6 carries for 36 yards, nice 6 yards a pop, caught 2 balls for just 1 yard, though. But ultimately, we had Dennis Allen finally say something nice about Kendre Miller. Said this guy brought a spark to the offense. Definitely somebody we want to get more involved in the weeks moving forward. And he played Kendre Miller significantly ahead of Jamal Williams, who barely sniffed the field. So I do think in terms of we've seen this role for Alvin Kamara, the Kubiak, that has Kubiak offense that has historically, dating back to Gary Kubiak and now again his son, Clint Kubiak. You could go 30 years back in history and you could just point to how many productive running backs nearly every single season. It doesn't matter who it is. Arian Foster becomes a monster. Steve Slayton, a one-year wonder, but absolutely crushed it when it was a Shanahan. There's so many. I don't know why I decided to choose those 2. You could go to Terrell Davis. I mean, there is just Mike Anderson. You can keep throwing the names out there. And this Kubiak offense has been a gold mine for running backs. And now, again, we've seen it happen for Kamara, but if he went down, does look like Kendre Miller would be the next man up out there in 95% of leagues. So if you need to fill that roster bench space with some upside, he is certainly the right type of guy to look at. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.